I didn't even realize I'd done it. 5 years of marriage, and I stood before their guests saying, Caleb is wonderful, not quite as adventurous as Damien was, but wonderful. The laughter Ione anticipated was replaced by uncomfortable silence. Her husband's champagne glass lowered slowly, his practiced smile dissolving into something raw. That night, when I reached for him in bed, he turned toward the wall without explanation. The anniversary dinner at Romano's Bistro had been my idea, naturally. I wanted everyone to see how perfect our life was. Caleb's steady income as an IT manager, our beautiful daughter Thea, my position at Hartford Insurance. I'd invited both families, my sister Mara, even some colleagues from work. The private dining room glowed with candlelight, and I felt radiant in my new red dress. 5 years, I announced, raising my champagne flute. The bubbles tickled my nose as I surveyed our guests. Caleb's mother Judith sat stiffly beside his brother Sean, both wearing forced smiles. Mara was scrolling her phone under the table. My colleague Lila looked bored, probably thinking about her own dating disasters. 5 wonderful years with this amazing man, I continued, gesturing toward Caleb. He was watching me with those steady brown eyes, patient as always. Sometimes his calmness frustrated me. I wanted passion, fire, the kind of intensity that made you feel alive. That's when Damien's face flashed through my mind. My ex-boyfriend had been coming to our office for months now, handling his company's insurance policies. We'd been chatting more lately, remembering old times. He still had that mischievous grin, that way of making everything feel like an adventure. Caleb is wonderful, I heard myself saying. Not quite as adventurous as Damien was, but wonderful. The words hung in the air like smoke. I watched the color drain from several faces around the table. Mara's mouth fell open. Lila's eyebrows shot up, but it was Caleb's reaction that made my stomach drop. His champagne glass lowered slowly, his practiced smile dissolving into something raw and wounded. I started, but the damage was done. The silence stretched uncomfortably until Sean cleared his throat and muttered something about the weather. Judith's voice cut through the awkwardness like ice. How lovely that you still think about other men during your anniversary toast, dear. My face burned. That's not what I meant, I was just... We know what you meant, Judith said quietly, her grey eyes boring into mine. The rest of the dinner passed in stilted conversation. Caleb barely spoke, methodically cutting his steak, while others tried to fill the silence. When Thea spilled her juice, he cleaned it up with mechanical precision, not meeting my eyes. Later, as we drove home through the quiet suburban streets, I tried to explain. Honey, you know I didn't mean anything by that. It was just a silly comparison. Everyone makes those. Caleb's hands gripped the steering wheel. Do they? Of course, like when people say their new car isn't as fast as their old one, but they love it anyway. It was harmless. He pulled into our driveway and sat for a moment, engine ticking as it cooled. Ione, do you hear yourself? You compared our marriage to your ex-boyfriend at our anniversary dinner, in front of my mother, in front of our friends. You're overreacting, I said, but even as the words left my mouth, I knew they sounded weak. Besides, you never want to do anything spontaneous. When was the last time we went somewhere we hadn't planned months in advance? Is that what this is about? You want more excitement? I unbuckled my seatbelt, suddenly exhausted. I want to feel like we're living, not just existing. Inside our townhouse, Caleb went straight to the guest room, where he kept his computer set up. I could hear him typing, probably working on some project. He always retreated to work when we fought. I checked on Thea, smoothing her dark hair as she slept. At 7, she had Caleb's thoughtful eyes and my stubborn chin. She was the best thing we'd made together, the reason I kept trying to make this marriage work. When I finally went to our bedroom, Caleb was already under the covers, facing away from me. I slipped in beside him, reaching across the space between us. Caleb? His body tensed at my touch. I'm tired, Ione. We should talk about this. There's nothing to talk about. You made your feelings clear tonight. I pressed against his back, feeling the warmth of his skin through his t-shirt. My feelings are that I love you, that I chose you, that we've built a life together. But he didn't respond, and eventually I gave up, lying awake in the darkness wondering why I felt so empty. The next morning, I found his wedding ring on the bathroom counter. The ring sat there like an accusation, the white gold catching the morning light. I stared at it while brushing my teeth, foam dripping from my mouth. Caleb was already gone. I'd heard him leave early, before his usual time. Daddy forgot his ring, Thea said from the doorway, still in her princess pajamas. He'll remember it later, sweetheart. I slipped the ring into my jewelry box, my hands trembling slightly. Let's get you ready for school. At Hartford Insurance, I tried to focus on policy renewals and claim forms, but my mind kept drifting. The office buzzed with its usual Monday energy, phones ringing, keyboards clicking, the coffee machine gurgling in the break room. My cubicle felt smaller than usual, the grey fabric walls closing in. Rough weekend? Lila appeared at my desk with 2 cups of coffee, her expression carefully neutral. Just tired. I accepted the coffee gratefully. Lila had been my closest friend at work for 3 years, ever since she'd started in claims processing. She knew about my frustrations with Caleb, how sometimes I felt like I was disappearing into suburban mediocrity. That was quite a toast Saturday night, she said, settling into the chair beside my desk. My stomach clenched. Everyone's making such a big deal out of nothing. I misspoke, that's all. Lila sipped her coffee, studying me over the rim. Damien Keller was asking about you yesterday. What? The word came out sharper than I intended. He called about his policy renewal. Asked how you were doing, if you were happy here. She paused meaningfully. Seemed like more than professional interest. Heat crept up my neck. Damien and I had been texting occasionally. Nothing serious, just friendly catch-up messages. He'd mentioned how good I looked when he'd seen me at the grocery store last month, how marriage seemed to agree with me. It felt good to be noticed, to have someone see me as more than just Caleb's wife or Thea's mother. We dated in college, I said carefully. It's natural to be friendly. Friendly. Lila nodded slowly. Is that what we're calling it? Before I could respond, my phone buzzed with a text from Mara. Mum's asking about Saturday night. What should I tell her? I typed back quickly. Tell her people are gossiping about nothing. Caleb and I are fine. But we weren't fine. That evening, Caleb came home late, claiming he'd had to stay for a system upgrade. He ate the dinner I'd reheated in silence, then disappeared into the guest room again. When I knocked on the door around 10, he called out that he was working. Can we please talk? I pressed my forehead against the door. This is ridiculous. We're acting like strangers. I'm trying to finish something important. More important than your marriage. The typing stopped. After a long moment, the door opened. Caleb stood there in his reading glasses, looking tired and older than his 37 years. What do you want me to say, Ione? That I'm fine with you comparing me to your ex-boyfriend in front of everyone we know? That I should just pretend it didn't hurt? I want you to forgive me for a stupid mistake. I want us to move past this. He studied my face, and for a moment I thought he might soften. Then his expression hardened again. Do you love him? What? No. Caleb, I love you. I married you. That's not what I asked. The question hung between us like a landmine, because the truth was complicated. I didn't love Damien, not anymore, but I missed the way he used to make me feel. Desired, exciting, worth pursuing. He's married, I said finally. He has a wife, a whole life. Whatever we had was years ago. But you still think about it, about him. I wanted to lie, to give him the simple answer that would make this go away. Instead, I found myself being honest. Sometimes. Don't you ever think about your exes? Something shifted in his face. Not during our anniversary toast. He closed the door gently but firmly, leaving me standing in the hallway. The next few days passed in a strange, polite dance. Caleb was cordial but distant, speaking to me only about practical matters. Thea's schedule, household tasks, bills. He slept in the guest room, claiming his back was bothering him. At breakfast, he read the news on his tablet while I got Thea ready for school. "Why is Daddy sleeping in the computer room?" Thea asked one morning, her cereal growing soggy as she waited for an answer. "He's been working late. He doesn't want to wake Mommy up when he comes to bed." She accepted this with 7-year-old logic, but I could see her watching us both more carefully, sensing the tension, even if she couldn't name it. At work, I found myself looking forward to Damien's calls more than I should. His voice was warm and familiar, a reminder of who I used to be before I became someone's wife and mother. When he suggested meeting for coffee to discuss his policy changes in person, I hesitated for exactly 3 seconds before agreeing. "The cafe on Maple Street," he suggested, "Thursday at 2. "That works." I kept my voice professional, aware that Lila was listening from the next cubicle. Thursday afternoon, I told my supervisor I was meeting a client and drove to the small coffee shop downtown. Damien was already there, looking annoyingly good in a navy blazer and jeans. At 35, he'd kept his athletic build and easy confidence. His wedding ring caught the light as he waved me over. "Ione." He stood to hug me, and I caught a hint of his cologne, the same one he'd worn in college. "You look incredible." "Thank you." I settled into the chair across from him, hyper-aware of how I looked in my best work dress. "So, about your policy renewal." He laughed, the sound rich and familiar. "Let's be honest, I could have handled that over the phone. I wanted to see you." My pulse quickened. "Damien." I know. We're both married. But we can still be friends, can't we? Talk about old times." For the next hour, we did exactly that. He told me about his marketing firm, his travels for work, the house he and his wife Evelyn had bought in the suburbs. I found myself sharing more than I intended, my frustrations with work, how sometimes I felt invisible in my own life. "You were never invisible," he said, leaning forward. "You were always the most vibrant person in any room. I hope Caleb knows how lucky he is." The compliment warmed me more than it should have. When we parted ways, he squeezed my hand and suggested we do it again sometime. I drove back to work with my cheeks flushed and my heart beating faster than usual. That evening, I tried harder with Caleb. I made his favorite dinner, opened a bottle of wine, put on music. But he remained politely distant, thanking me for the meal before retreating to his computer again. Later, as I cleaned up the kitchen, I noticed a folder on the counter labeled Documentation. It was thick, filled with printed pages I couldn't quite see from my angle. When I reached for it, curious, Caleb appeared in the doorway. "Leave that alone, please." "What is it?" "Work stuff." He picked up the folder and tucked it under his arm. "Nothing that concerns you." But the way he said it, the careful neutrality of his tone, made my skin prickle with unease. As he disappeared back into the guest room, I found myself wondering what exactly he was documenting and why he didn't want me to see it. The folder haunted my thoughts for days. I caught glimpses of it on Caleb's desk when he left the guest room door open, always just out of reach, always carefully positioned so I couldn't see its contents. When I asked about it again, he deflected with the same calm professionalism he brought to everything else. "Just organizing some files," he'd say, or "tax preparation stuff." But tax season was months away, and something about his tone didn't ring true. Thea's art fair provided a welcome distraction. Every spring, Riverside Elementary transformed its gymnasium into a gallery showcasing student artwork. Parents, grandparents, and siblings crowded between the displays, admiring finger paintings and clay sculptures with the seriousness of museum patrons. I dressed carefully that morning, a soft blue sweater that brought out my eyes, dark jeans that fit perfectly, just enough makeup to look polished without seeming like I was trying too hard. If people were going to whisper about the anniversary toast, I wanted to look confident and composed. "Mummy, you look pretty," Thea said as we walked toward the school, her small hand in mine. "Thank you, sweetheart. I'm so excited to see your painting." She'd been working on a family portrait for weeks, carefully guarding it from my curious eyes. All she'd told me was that it showed everyone being happy together. Inside the gymnasium, colorful artwork covered every available surface. Parents clustered around their children's displays, phones out to capture every angle. I spotted Caleb near the back wall, studying Thea's section with his usual quiet intensity. He looked good, he always did, in his weekend uniform of khakis and a button-down shirt. For a moment, seeing him there waiting for us, I felt a flutter of the old attraction. "Daddy!" Thea broke away from me and ran to him, launching herself into his arms. "There's my artist," he said, spinning her around. When he set her down, his eyes met mine briefly before looking away. "The portrait is beautiful, Thea." I approached their display, curious to see what she'd created. The painting showed 4 figures standing in front of a house: a tall man with brown hair, a woman with long dark hair, a little girl between them, and... "Who's that?" I asked, pointing to the 4th figure, a man standing slightly apart from the family group. "That's Mr. Damien," Thea said matter-of-factly. "He comes to Mommy's work sometimes. I drew him because you talk about him." The blood drained from my face. Around us, other parents were looking at the painting with interest, no doubt recognizing the name from my anniversary toast. I could feel their eyes on me, could practically hear the mental notes being taken. "Thea, honey," I said carefully, "Mr. Damien isn't part of our family." "But you said he was adventurous. I thought that meant he was important." Caleb's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. He crouched down to Thea's level, his voice gentle but firm. "Sweetie, our family is you, me, and Mommy, just the 3 of us." "Oh." Thea looked confused but accepting. "Should I paint over him?" "No," Caleb said, standing. "Your art is perfect the way it is." But I could see the damage was done. Judith appeared at my shoulder, her grey hair perfectly styled, her expression arctic. "How interesting that your daughter includes your ex-boyfriend in family portraits," she said quietly, her voice pitched just low enough that nearby parents had to strain to hear. "It's not like that," I protested. "She misunderstood something I said." "Did she?" Judith's eyes were cold. "Children are remarkably perceptive, dear. They pick up on things we think we're hiding." Sean joined us then, his wife Lisa trailing behind with their twin boys. The family resemblance between the Faraday men was strong, the same steady brown eyes, the same quiet strength. But where Caleb was reserved, Sean was more direct. "Nice painting, Thea," he said, ruffling his niece's hair. Then, to me, "Interesting addition to the family portrait." "Sean," Caleb warned quietly. "What? I'm just making an observation." The tension was thick enough to cut. Other parents were definitely listening now, their conversations growing quieter as they strained to catch our words. I felt exposed, like I was standing under a spotlight in my underwear. "Maybe we should look at some other artwork," I suggested, desperate to escape the scrutiny. "Good idea," Caleb agreed. But as we moved through the gymnasium, I noticed how he positioned himself between me and other parents, how his family formed a subtle barrier around us. It should have felt protective, but instead it felt like containment. At the refreshment table, I found myself standing next to Janet Morrison, whose son was in Thea's class. We'd chatted at school events before. Nothing deep, just the casual friendliness of parents in the same social circle. "Your daughter is so talented," Janet said, but there was something sharp in her smile. That family portrait was particularly revealing. "Children have such active imaginations," I replied, trying to keep my voice light. "Oh, absolutely. Though sometimes they're more honest than we give them credit for." She sipped her punch thoughtfully. "I heard about your anniversary toast. How brave of you to be so open about your feelings." The word brave dripped with false admiration. And I knew exactly what she meant. Word had spread, as it always did in our small community. The story had probably grown in the telling, becoming more scandalous with each repetition. People love to gossip, I said. Don't they just? Janet's smile widened. Well, I should find my husband. Lovely seeing you, Ione. She drifted away, and I knew she'd be sharing this conversation with her friends before the day was out. I could already imagine the text messages flying between the school moms, dissecting every word and expression. When it came time for the group photo, all the families gathered around their children's artwork. I tried to position myself close to Caleb, to present a united front. But as the photographer counted down, Caleb stepped away, ostensibly to get a better angle of Thea's painting. The camera flashed, capturing me standing alone beside our daughter, while my husband maintained careful distance. The drive home was quiet, Thea chattering about her friend's artwork, while Caleb and I sat in tense silence. At a red light, my phone buzzed with a text from Mara. Lila just sent me a screenshot of your message to some guy named Damien. We need to talk. My blood turned to ice. I glanced at Caleb, but he was focused on the road, his profile giving nothing away. With shaking fingers, I opened the message thread with Damien from the day before. Casual conversation about coffee, a joke about office politics, and at the end, my response to his compliment about my dress. You always know how to make a girl feel special. Thanks for the ego boost. Innocent enough in context, but in a screenshot, without the full conversation, it looked like flirtation. And if Lila had it, who else did? As we pulled into our driveway, I realized that my carefully constructed life was beginning to crumble, one small revelation at a time. The question was whether I could stop the collapse before it destroyed everything I'd worked to build. The screenshot haunted me. That evening, after Thea was asleep, I called Mara from the privacy of our bedroom. She answered on the first ring, her voice tight with concern. Ione, what the hell is going on? It's not what it looks like, I said, pacing between the bed and the window. Lila took that completely out of context. Out of context? You're telling a married man he makes you feel special. With a smiley emoji. We're friends. We dated in college, but that was over a decade ago. He's been coming to the office for business, and we've just been catching up. Catching up. Mara's tone was flat. Is that what you call it when you meet married men for coffee? My stomach dropped. How did you... Lila saw you at the cafe on Maple Street. She said you looked pretty cozy for a business meeting. I sank onto the bed, feeling trapped. Lila had been my friend, my confidant. Now she was spreading stories, turning innocent interactions into something sordid. She's making it sound worse than it is, I protested. We talked for an hour, about work, about old times. Nothing happened. Ione, listen to yourself. You're having secret coffee dates with your ex while your husband sleeps in the guest room. How do you think this looks? I'm not having an affair. Maybe not physically, but emotionally. Come on, I've watched you with Caleb. You've been distant for months, complaining about how boring your life is. Now suddenly your exciting ex-boyfriend shows up and you're sneaking around to see him. The accusation stung because it held a grain of truth. My connection with Damien had awakened something in me that had been dormant for years, a sense of possibility, of being desired for who I was, rather than just for the role I played. I love my husband, I said, but the words felt hollow. Do you? Or do you love the stability he provides? Before I could answer, I heard footsteps in the hallway. Caleb appeared in the doorway, his expression unreadable. I have to go, I told Mara, ending the call. Caleb stood there for a moment, studying me. Everything all right? Fine, just sister drama. He nodded slowly, but I could see the skepticism in his eyes. I need to get some files from the dresser. I watched as he opened the top drawer and retrieved a manila folder, not the thick documentation folder I'd seen before, but something smaller. He moved with purpose, like someone executing a plan. What's in there? I asked. Bank statements. I'm organizing our finances. Why? We've never had problems with money. He paused at the doorway. No, we haven't. But things change, don't they? The next morning brought fresh humiliation. At work, I could feel eyes on me as I walked to my desk. Conversation stopped when I passed, then resumed in whispers after I'd gone by. Lila was nowhere to be seen, which somehow made it worse. Her absence felt pointed, deliberate. Around 10, my supervisor, Margaret Chen, appeared at my cubicle. She was a small, efficient woman in her 50s who ran the administrative department with quiet authority. Ione, could I see you in my office, please? My mouth went dry. Margaret's office was glass-walled, visible to the entire floor. As I followed her across the open workspace, I felt like I was walking to my execution. Close the door, she said once we were inside. I sat in the chair across from her desk, my hands folded in my lap to hide their trembling. I've received some concerning information, Margaret began, her voice carefully neutral, about your interactions with a client. If this is about Damien Keller, I can explain. So you know what this is about. She opened a folder on her desk. I have reports that you've been meeting with Mr. Keller outside of normal business hours, and that your communications have been inappropriate. We had coffee once to discuss his policy renewal, and our text messages have been completely professional. Margaret's eyebrows rose slightly. Professional messages don't typically include comments about making someone feel special. Heat flooded my cheeks. That was taken out of context. We're old friends. I was just being polite. Ione, you know our policy about client relationships. We maintain strict boundaries for good reason. When those boundaries are crossed, it reflects poorly on the entire company. I understand, but nothing inappropriate happened. I would never... Mrs. Keller called this morning. The words hit me like a physical blow. What? Evelyn Keller. She's concerned about her husband's relationship with someone at our company. She mentioned seeing text messages, hearing about coffee meetings. She's asking questions about our professional standards. My world tilted. Evelyn knew. Damien's wife had discovered our communications and was now involving my employer. The careful boundary between my professional and personal life was dissolving. I can call her, I said desperately. Explain that it's all innocent. She's misunderstanding. No. Margaret's voice was firm. You will have no further contact with either Mr. or Mrs. Keller. I'm reassigning his account to another agent. And Ione, I strongly suggest you reflect on your priorities. This kind of situation can escalate quickly. I left her office feeling like I'd been stripped naked in public. The walk back to my desk seemed endless, every pair of eyes burning into me. When I finally reached my cubicle, there was a note on my keyboard. HR wants to see you at 2 p.m. The rest of the morning crawled by. I tried to focus on policy renewals and claim forms, but my mind kept spinning through worst-case scenarios. Could they fire me over this? What would I tell Caleb? How would we manage on just his salary? At lunch, I sat alone in my car, too anxious to eat. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. We need to stop this before it gets worse. Can't risk my marriage. Please understand. D. So Damien was cutting contact, abandoning me to deal with the fallout alone. The man who'd made me feel special and alive was disappearing at the first sign of real consequences. I stared at the message, feeling foolish and used. The HR meeting was brief but humiliating. They had copies of the text messages. Somehow, Evelyn Keller had gotten screenshots and sent them to the company. Out of context, stripped of nuance, they looked damning. My explanations fell on deaf ears. We're not taking disciplinary action at this time, the HR representative said, but this is a formal warning. Any further incidents will result in immediate termination. I drove home in a daze, my career hanging by a thread, my reputation in ruins. The house felt different when I walked in, colder, more sterile. Caleb's presence seemed to fill every room, even when he wasn't there. That evening, he emerged from the guest room carrying a thick folder, the documentation file I'd seen before. It was even thicker now, bulging with papers. "We need to talk," he said, setting the folder on the dining room table. "About what?" "About us. About where this marriage is going." I sat across from him, my heart hammering. The folder lay between us like evidence in a trial. "I know about the coffee meeting," he said quietly. "I know about the text messages. I know about the HR meeting today." "How could you possibly—" "Evelyn Keller called me. She thought I should know what my wife was doing with her husband." The room spun around me. "Caleb, I can explain." "Can you? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you've been having an emotional affair, meeting secretly with your ex-boyfriend, exchanging flirtatious messages, lying to me about it." "It wasn't like that." "Then what was it like, Ione? Help me understand how you can claim to love me while sneaking around with another man." I opened my mouth to respond, but no words came. Because the truth was complicated and ugly and would only make things worse. "I've been documenting everything," Caleb continued, his voice eerily calm. "The anniversary toast, the text messages, the coffee meeting, your daughter drawing him in our family portrait, the HR complaint." He opened the folder, revealing pages of printed screenshots, bank statements, and handwritten notes. My entire betrayal laid out in black and white, organized with the methodical precision he brought to everything. "Why?" I whispered. "Because I needed to understand what I was dealing with, whether this marriage was worth saving." He closed the folder carefully. "I have my answer now." "Caleb, please, it was a mistake. A stupid, meaningless mistake. We can work through this." "Some mistakes can't be undone, Ione. Some betrayals are too fundamental." He stood, taking the folder with him. "I'll be staying at Sean's for a few days. I need space to think." "What about Thea?" "She'll stay here with you for now, but Ione?" He paused at the doorway, his expression harder than I'd ever seen it. "This isn't over. Not by a long shot." After he left, I sat alone at the dining room table, the silence pressing down on me like a weight. Through the window, I could see our neighbors' houses, their windows glowing with warm light, families gathered around dinner tables and television screens, normal people living normal lives, untouched by the chaos I'd created. My phone buzzed with a text from Judith. "Caleb told us what happened. You should be ashamed of yourself." Then another from Sean. "Hope it was worth it." And finally, from Mara. "Mum wants to talk to you. She's not happy." I turned off my phone and climbed the stairs to my empty bedroom, wondering how everything had unraveled so quickly, and whether there was any way to put it back together. The next few days passed in a haze of whispered conversations and averted eyes. At work, I was radioactive. Colleagues who used to chat by the coffee machine now found urgent tasks elsewhere when I approached. The story had spread beyond our office, carried by the efficient gossip network that connected every workplace, school, and social circle in our suburb. Lila finally cornered me in the bathroom on Thursday, her expression a mixture of guilt and defiance. "I didn't mean for it to blow up like this," she said, checking under the stall doors to make sure we were alone. "Didn't you?" I was washing my hands for the third time, unable to meet her eyes in the mirror. "You sent screenshots to my sister. You told Margaret about the coffee meeting. What did you think would happen?" "I was worried about you. You were making bad choices, and someone needed to destroy my marriage, ruin my career." "Thanks, Lila. Great friendship." She flinched. "Your marriage was already in trouble. Everyone could see it. The way you talked about Caleb, the way you lit up whenever Damien called. So you decided to play savior." "I decided to be honest. Something you should try." I turned to face her, anger flaring in my chest. "Honest? You want honesty? Fine. You're jealous. You've been single for 2 years, going on terrible dates with men who don't call back. And you couldn't stand watching me have something you don't." Her face went white. "That's not—" "It is exactly that. You saw me getting attention from an attractive man, and you couldn't handle it. So you sabotaged me." Ione, you're having an emotional affair. I didn't sabotage anything. I exposed something that was already happening. But I was past listening. The friendship that had sustained me through 3 years of office politics and suburban monotony was over, another casualty of my unraveling life. That evening, I picked up Thea from after-school care, dreading the questions she'd inevitably ask about her father's absence. But she seemed to accept my explanation that Daddy was helping Uncle Sean with a project, her 7-year-old mind not yet equipped to understand the complexities of adult relationships. "When is he coming home?" she asked over dinner, pushing peas around her plate. "Soon, sweetheart. He just needs to finish what he's working on." "Is it because of my painting? Because I drew Mr. Damien?" The question pierced my heart. "No, baby. Your painting is beautiful. This has nothing to do with you." But even as I said it, I wondered if that was true. How much of our family drama had she absorbed? What lasting damage was I inflicting on my daughter's sense of security? My phone rang as I was tucking Thea into bed. Caleb's name appeared on the screen, and my heart leaped with desperate hope. "Hi," I said, stepping into the hallway. "I need to come by tomorrow to get some things. Will you be at work?" His voice was businesslike, devoid of warmth. "Yes, but Caleb, can we please talk? Really talk?" "I don't think that's a good idea right now." "Please, 5 minutes. I know I messed up, but we can fix this. We have Thea to think about." A long pause. "Ione, I've been thinking about Thea, about what kind of environment she's growing up in, what kind of example we're setting." "What do you mean?" "I mean, maybe it's better if she sees that actions have consequences, that when someone breaks their commitments, there are real results." The implication hit me like cold water. "You're talking about custody. I'm talking about what's best for our daughter. I'm her mother." "Yes, you are, and I'm her father, the parent who's been faithful to his marriage vows." The line went dead, leaving me standing in the dark hallway, my world crumbling around me. Friday brought fresh humiliation. Margaret called me into her office again, her expression grimmer than before. "We've had more complaints," she said without preamble. "Other clients are asking questions about our professional standards. The Keller situation has become a liability." "I haven't contacted either of them since our last conversation," I protested. "I know, but the damage is done. Corporate is asking questions, and I'm under pressure to take action." My stomach clenched. What kind of action? "Suspension pending investigation, 2 weeks, unpaid." The words hit me like physical blows. 2 weeks without pay, with my reputation destroyed and my marriage falling apart. How would I explain this to Thea, to my parents? "Margaret, please. I have a daughter, a mortgage. I can't afford—" "You should have thought of that before you decided to blur professional boundaries." Her tone wasn't cruel, just tired. "I'm sorry, Ione, I really am, but my hands are tied." I cleaned out my desk in a fog of shame, aware that every eye in the office was on me. The personal items that had made my cubicle feel like home, photos of Thea, a small plant, coffee mug with a funny saying, now seemed pathetic as I packed them into a cardboard box. The drive home took forever. I sat in my car in the driveway, staring at the house Caleb and I had bought 5 years ago with such hope and excitement. The mortgage we'd celebrated getting approved for now felt like a crushing weight. Inside, the silence was oppressive. I wandered from room to room, noting the small signs of Caleb's absence. His coffee mug missing from the kitchen sink, his side of the closet looking sparse, the guest room stripped of his computer setup. My phone buzzed with a text from Mara. "Mum wants you to call her. She's heard things from the church ladies." Of course. The gossip had reached my mother's social circle, which meant it would soon be common knowledge among everyone I'd grown up with. I could picture the conversations over coffee and casseroles, the mixture of concern and satisfaction that came with other people's downfall. I poured a glass of wine, then another, and tried to craft a social media post that would control the narrative. Something about taking time to focus on family, about the challenges of balancing work and personal life. But everything I wrote sounded hollow and defensive. Instead, I found myself scrolling through old photos, looking for evidence of happier times. There was our wedding day, Caleb looking handsome and nervous in his tuxedo, me radiant in white silk. Our honeymoon in Hawaii, both of us tan and laughing. Thea's first steps, first birthday, first day of school. When had we stopped looking at each other the way we did in those early photos? When had comfortable routine replaced passionate connection? And why had I thought the answer was to seek that connection elsewhere? The doorbell rang at 8 o'clock. Through the peephole, I saw a young man in a suit holding an envelope. Ione Faraday. Yes? You've been served. My hands shook as I opened the envelope. The legal language was dense and formal, but the meaning was clear. Petition for dissolution of marriage, temporary custody arrangements, financial disclosures. At the bottom, Caleb's signature, neat and precise as always. I sank onto the couch, the papers scattered around me like fallen leaves. This was really happening. My marriage, my family, my carefully constructed life, all of it disappearing because of a few careless words and some flirtatious text messages. But even as I sat there, surrounded by the wreckage of my choices, part of me still believed I could fix this. That if I just found the right words, the right approach, I could make Caleb understand that what I'd done wasn't worth throwing away 5 years of marriage. I was wrong, of course, but I wouldn't realize that until it was far too late. The divorce papers sat on my coffee table, like a bomb that had already detonated. I read them 3 times, each pass revealing new ways my life was about to change. Temporary custody schedule. Thea would spend weekdays with me, weekends with Caleb. Financial disclosures required within 30 days. Division of assets to be determined. What terrified me most was how prepared everything seemed. The paperwork was thorough, professional, complete. This wasn't an impulsive decision made in anger. This was the result of careful planning and methodical preparation. I called the law firm, listed on the documents, desperate to understand what I was facing. Brennan, Walsh and Associates, a crisp voice answered. This is Ione Faraday. I received divorce papers from your office, and I need to understand. Please hold while I transfer you to Mr. Walsh's assistant. The hold music was classical and soothing, completely at odds with my panic. After what felt like hours, a new voice came on the line. Mrs. Faraday, this is Jennifer, Mr. Walsh's assistant. How can I help you? I need to know what happens next. My husband filed for divorce and I don't understand the process. Have you retained legal counsel? No, I just got the papers today. I'd recommend you do so as soon as possible. The temporary orders hearing is scheduled for next Friday. Next Friday? That's only a week away. Yes, ma'am. Your husband's attorney filed for expedited processing due to concerns about the family's financial assets. Financial assets? What was Caleb worried about? We had a joint checking account, some savings, his 401k. Nothing complicated enough to require urgent legal protection. Unless... I hung up and ran to the guest room, pulling open the desk drawers where Caleb used to keep our important papers. They were empty. Every bank statement, insurance policy, and investment document was gone. In our bedroom, I checked the filing cabinet. Also empty. My laptop showed that our joint checking account had been frozen, pending legal review. I had exactly 304 Wisvenelos in my personal account, money I'd saved from birthday gifts and the occasional freelance project. The scope of Caleb's preparation was staggering. While I'd been lost in coffee dates and flirtatious texts, he'd been quietly fortifying every corner of our financial and legal life. The documentation folder wasn't just proof of my betrayal. It was the cornerstone of a meticulous strategy to end our marriage on his terms. Divorce attorneys demanded retainers I couldn't pay. The few offering payment plans were booked for weeks. By Sunday, I secured a consultation with Linda Morrison, a newer, more affordable lawyer, for Tuesday. Thea returned from her weekend at Sean's house bubbling with stories, oblivious that this was her new routine. "Daddy says I'll have 2 homes now," she announced over dinner, "like Emma at school. She gets 2 bedrooms and twice the Christmas presents." Her innocent shrug shattered me. I hugged her tighter at bedtime, unable to explain that divorce wasn't a gift. Monday morning, Judith arrived unannounced, pearls gleaming, disapproval sharp. "Thea needs stability," she said, settling into Caleb's chair. "You've been suspended for inappropriate conduct with a married man. You humiliated your husband in public. The courts will see who's the responsible parent." Tuesday's consultation with Linda confirmed the worst. Caleb's petition was comprehensive. Financial disclosures, witness statements, evidence of instability. "He's been planning this for months," Linda said. "Your chances of primary custody are slim. Contested battles are expensive and brutal." That evening I begged Caleb on the phone. "We can fix this for Thea's sake." "There's nothing left to fix," he said quietly. "This was a series of choices. Now live with the consequences." 2 days later, an emergency motion granted temporary custody to Caleb. I watched helplessly as he and Thea packed her favorite things: books, stuffed elephant, princess sheets. She chatted excitedly about staying at Uncle Sean's, unaware she was being removed from her home because of my decisions. After they left, her room felt hollow. Art supplies scattered, bed stripped, bookshelf half empty. Consequences weren't loud arguments. They were quiet, legal, final. 3 days later, a courier delivered Caleb's final settlement. Foreclosure looming, supervised visitation every other weekend, all documented in precise detail. A note in his handwriting read, "You wanted adventure. Now you have it. Live with it." The doorbell rang last. Judith handed me an envelope containing our family portrait from Thea's art fair. Someone had painted over Damien's figure, leaving blank space. On the back, in Thea's careful handwriting, "Fixed it, Daddy. Now it's just our real family." I stood in the empty house, holding the picture of a life erased, finally understanding that the man I risked everything for had never been worth the cost, and that some mistakes leave permanent empty spaces.